Hey there, Dylan Reich here. Welcome back to another video. I'm going to talk a little bit more about songwriting today, and this is a kind of companion piece to the previous video I made where I talked a little bit about judgment and how sometimes that can paralyze us as songwriters because if we get too focused on the outcome and judging it, it impacts our ability to actually write and do the job. Today, I wanted to kind of take a different angle on a similar topic. So over the years, I've had countless songwriting students that have come to me over the years. And I want to share with you something that is a common thread that shows up time and again. And it all kind of stems from this judgment idea. Okay, so first, it's pretty normal that when you're coming up with an idea for a song that you would judge it. Okay, it's pretty normal. We've all done it. You play a thing and you think, that's got some promise. I like where this is going. Or perhaps you think, well, that sucked, and you forget about it. So, but something we often never do is consciously bring to mind, how are we making this determination? What criteria are we using to actually decide any of this? Right? Sometimes it's something people just instinctively do and have never thought about. So today, this is an opportunity for us all to think about it. And when you really go down a few layers, what you typically find is people judge it by, does it sound good? Does it feel good? Does it remind you of good songs? This kind of stuff, like Dylan, seems pretty obvious. Of course, we're going to judge music by does it sound good and what it sounds like, and does it feel good? This is, the most obvious thing ever. Surely you're not going to argue against that in a video. So no, I'm not arguing against it. Being able to filter an idea through your own taste and your own judgment is a critically important skill. So yes, we should do this, but it's not the only thing. That's what I'm arguing today. So I'm going to share with you something that I've said to many, many people over the years, and it's going to sound a bit weird, but stick with me for a couple of minutes and I think you'll get what I mean. And that is, the ingredients in a cake don't have to taste good. One more time. The ingredients in a cake don't have to taste good. Okay? The ingredients in a cake is basically a list of things that are not cake. Okay? We put them together in a certain way, in a certain proportion and balance, do certain things with them, and then, now it's a cake. Okay? So, just to illustrate what I'm talking about, let's just pretend, just for a minute, we're not songwriters. Instead, we're bakers. Okay? We're passionate about baking. We think this is awesome. We love it so much, we want to do it. We want to make our own recipes and our own cakes, right? And we're very enthusiastic and we're excited to get going. And we can't wait to start looking for ingredients to put in our very first recipe. All right? And the first thing we come across is flour. And we think, okay, what's this all about? Now imagine we take a spoon, scoop some up, start eating it. Okay? Imagine that. And we're going to judge this flour by, does it taste good? And does it feel good? Does it make us feel good? We're going to judge it by, does it remind us of the finished product of our dreams? Now, if that's our mindset, what do you think we're going to do? We're going to say, this is freaking disgusting, and we're going to throw it in the trash. Okay? We're going to say, this is nothing like the thing I want. We want these elaborate, sweet, creamy, decadent desserts. And instead, this is a white, dry powder that is unpalatable and horrible. So clearly, it stands to reason that I'd be out of my mind to want to put this into my cake, right? Surely the only rational thing I can do right now is take this stuff, throw it in the trash where it belongs, and keep looking. Because maybe the next thing will be the thing. Maybe the next thing will actually be good. And then we'll find eggs. That's the next thing we're going to find. We're going to pick one up. We're going to think, what is this all about? And you just take a bite out of one. Can you imagine doing that? And again, we're going to judge this by, does it taste good? Does it feel good? What are we going to do? Throw it in the trash, right? You see where I'm going with this. Okay, so part of writing music is you're developing this skill of almost like a camera lens, where you want to be able to zoom in, zoom out, pan left, right, and look at the same thing from multiple angles. Okay, so yes, like I said, it is valuable to be able to look at something and think, what do I think of this as a finished product? Okay, that is valuable. Or what do I think of this as a melody or a chord progression or a groove or whatever it is, some sort of sub stack of things inside a song. But sometimes we also want to shift gears and think, what do I think of this as unrefined raw materials? Right? So in that sense, it doesn't have to sound good. It might not. That's not the point. You're not thinking, is this a great song? You're thinking, what could I do with this? Right? What if I did this? What if I did that? Think combinations. What if I combined it with this? What if I combined it with that? What if, even if the thing on the whole is not that good, is there an aspect of it you can take? What if I ditched those notes but kept the phrasing? What if I, whatever, take one part of it, take the second half, leave the first half? Like you're looking at it through a lens of what could be, right? And you're running through in your mind, imagining it in different contexts, and then even trying it out in different contexts. Okay, because music is really, like, another thing I tell people is everything depends on everything else. It's all contextual, right? So you might have 5 notes, let's say, and we think they don't sound very good when you just play them. But it's really hard to have that opinion just on face value, because these 5 notes with this chord is different than with that chord. These 5 notes with this phrasing is different than with that phrasing. These 5 notes starting on this beat is different than if we start on that beat. With this groove, at this tempo, with this feel, with those dynamics, it's different than if we changed it around. This whole thing happening after this part of the song feels different than if it happened after that other part of the song, right? So it all depends, right? Everything depends on everything else. So sometimes we'll have, like, a lot of music works like this. Like if you want this to be louder, obviously we can make it louder, but one way to make this feel louder is to make this quieter, so that when the song comes along, boom, this is louder, right? Because we hear it in context. You want to make this bigger, make this smaller. You want this to be wider, make this narrower. Everything is in context. If we increase the tempo as the song goes on, it feels a certain way only because we were first in this other tempo. You know, when we do a key change, it feels the way it feels because we were previously in this other established key, right? This is how it all works. It's like, this works because of this over here. So sometimes especially when people are starting out, if if a certain thing is not working, let's say this, they start looking directly at it and thinking, I need to change this. And of course, that's something we can do. But what I'm saying is we can often change this by working over here, right? You can change how this chord feels by changing the chord before it. Does that make sense? When you start thinking this way, we can start thinking not just what is the thing, but what context is it in? And as a writer, try things out in different contexts. Put different chords, different phrasing, make it a shuffle. We can play around with what we're doing with each of these ingredients. And think of it just like that cake, okay? Flour doesn't taste good, but we mix it with certain things, now it's a cake. We mix it with other things, now it's pizza dough. We mix it with something else, and now it's pastry, whatever, on and on. The end result is different because of what we did with it, right? It's not just face value. Does flour taste good or doesn't it? Right? That's like, imagine if you're a chef, baker, whatever. If we walk into the kitchen with the mindset of I'm only going to use ingredients that remind me of the finished product I'm trying to make, that's probably 95% of things we're not even going to try using, right? So that's ultimately perhaps not helpful. So this is one of the key things I see over and over, is that people judge things very much on face value. And it is pretty normal, by the way, especially when you're starting out and making this transition from consumer to creator, right? Because as a consumer, that really is the level you're dealing with. Do I like the song or don't I? Does it feel good or not? But when you're the creator, you're like in the weeds and pulling the levers of all the little elements within it, right? So you got to activate some different parts of your brain and look at it from different angles and through a different lens, right? So the takeaway from a video like this is, next time you write something and you're judging it and you think, man, that sucked, stop and just ask yourself, how did I arrive at that conclusion? And whatever it is, does that serve you? Right? If the answer is yes, keep doing it. If no, this is a chance for you to recalibrate your thinking here and ask yourself, what do I mean by it sucks? Do I just mean as a finished product, I don't like this? And if so, does that mean it has no value at all? Right? So it's a skill like any other, right? You got to practice thinking about it in different ways, right? And just literally take it and try different things and try putting it in different contexts and combining it with different things. So on a basic level, just as an example, you may have sequence of notes that you think is pretty ordinary, a rhythm that's all right, this chord progression that's so, this other riff that's fine, in your opinion. I'm using the words people might use. But what if we had those notes with those chords at that tempo, with this feel, with this groove, and this production and that tone, and you're combining stuff, right? Think combinations. A lot of our favorite songs, if you really break down all the little elements, they're not that, mind-blowing. It's more like how it's all put together. So I'm going to give you a little example in a second, and actually play a guitar instead of just holding it. And it's going to be an interesting exercise, so hopefully you'll stick around. Let's do it now. All right, so let's do a little practical example of what we just talked about. For this example, I'm going to play the guitar because that's the instrument I know the best, but it is not about the guitar. It's more about music in general. And I'm also going to use one of my songs as an example. The song is called The Case of the Wandering Road. It's not really about that song. There's nothing that special about it. It's just one of my newer songs, so it's in my mind. All right, so let's dive in. This is going to be an interesting exercise. Let me know what you think of this. So I want you to look at this sequence of notes. All right. Now, it's kind of like all notes in this scale, A major, and it kind of starts on this A, and it goes down, and then it comes back up. Now, already, there's a little bit of that relationship we're talking about. When I said it goes down and it comes back up, right? You cannot come back up unless you first go down, right? You cannot come back unless you go away. So even something this simple of coming back, first we have to go away to even create the feeling of coming back, right? Very simple level, but this is the stuff I want to get your brain thinking about. So again, we go down and back up. And then we go down to here and we just go up. So pretty basic kind of idea there. So we hear all of these notes in relationship to one another, right? That's what we're trying to think about, the context, right? Like the second note is this, right? Those sound close together because they are. If the first note was this, it's completely different. That second note feels different even though it's the same note in the same spot, right? We hear them all in relationship to each other, in this case, in a line, right? So we're thinking of how these notes relate to each other in a line, okay? Now, next point. A lot of times when we're talking about melody, people describe melodies as the notes. What notes are in the melody, right? Melody is only part notes and the rest of it is rhythm, right? So melodies have rhythm, the riffs have rhythm, chord progressions have rhythm. Rhythm is the key, it's the thing that binds everything together. It's like a thread that joins it all together. So in this case, it's not just these notes in a line, how they relate to each other. We also want to consider how do they relate to the pulse of this music, okay? So in this case, it's going to be like this. I'll play it for you. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I'll do it again. I'll count out maybe the subdivisions. 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. Okay, so one thing to notice about this is it starts out hitting a lot of the downbeats, and then it switches over to being more on the offbeats, like in between. Take a listen to that one more time. 3, 4, 1, and 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. Okay, starts more on the downbeats, and then switches to the offbeats. I'll do it without my counting so you can hear it. 3, 4, 1. Right, so immediately you can see that as soon as we add some rhythm, it's a lot more interesting, I should say, right? Same notes, add some rhythm, immediately a little more interesting, okay? Or a lot more interesting. Okay, let's put that in a memory bank because we're going to come back to that in a second. Now, imagine I played this for you. Well, you don't have to imagine, I'm going to do it. Okay, so again, notes going down and coming back up. So similar in that sense. Also similar in that that's not, if you're judging that as a finished product, think about that. Would you sit down and say, wow, what a great song this is? Probably not. But remember, it's not just how those notes relate to each other. It's now how they relate to the rhythm and the pulse as well. But now how does this relate to the other thing we just did? Right? So how do these notes interact? And how do these rhythms interact? Rhythmically, it's kind of the same thing. So they should line up. But melodically, we should get some interest. We put them together, we get this. Right? Same notes. Bit of rhythm to it. Okay? All of a sudden, it's starting to sound like a thing. Again, remember, combinations. A little bit of these notes with this rhythm, with these other notes, da-da-da-da-da, right? Stitching it all together. Let's zoom in on this even more. Let's see how granular we can get here. So the first, that part we just did, so C sharp. The first note, two notes, the first bit is kind of tied over, so, but for all intents and purposes, it's like three of the same note. Melody does this. This little part goes. You put them together, we get this. So here's a case where we're adding a note that stays the same. But what's happening is its relationship to that top note is changing and it is evolving. Sixth, fifth, fourth, right? The distance between these two notes is changing, okay? So basically we've got a situation where we add something that doesn't change, that stays the same, and it creates change, right? Context. This might be very boring, but it doesn't really matter. It matters what does it do in context, okay? Just like it doesn't matter really what the viola of the orchestra sounds like by itself. It's not meant to be heard by itself. It matters, does it contribute to the whole thing, okay? Now, we're going even more granular. Let's keep going. So in music, we have this stuff. This is, you know, sometimes people get intimidated by some of the terminology. We have something called similar motion, which means when one thing goes one way, the other thing does the same. It basically just means two things move the same way. One goes up, the other one goes up. One goes down, the other one goes down. And then we have contrary motion, just what it sounds like. One goes up, the other one goes down. They do opposite things. And oblique motion, which is kind of what we just did, where one stays the same and the other thing moves, right? Don't worry too much about the terminology. It just means these are different musical words to describe the interaction between two voices. So here we've got a little bit of that oblique motion, if you want to call it that. One thing stays the same, the other one moves. Then they move together. They both start here and go down. And then one goes up. Ba, ba. The other one goes down. Mm-hmm. Put them together, you get. And then they move together. So there's a little of everything there. Right? But the point I want to stress is that this motion needs both parts to exist. Right? So one thing is just one thing, the other thing is its own thing, but when you put them together, a third thing starts to exist, which is their interaction with each other. Okay? That's what I'm trying to get across, is like you can take something simple, some other thing that's simple, put them together, and it might be more interesting than you thought. Okay? Let's keep going. Take a listen to this. probably sounds like I'm meandering around on this minor pentatonic down here. You know, it's a running joke that guitar players only ever learn one scale in one position, and it's the minor pentatonic, and it's this one I'm using right here. So it's a pretty common ingredient, if you want to call it that. Again, it's not just what those notes sound like together in a line, which is part of it, but how do they interact with the rhythm and the pulse? Let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. I'll do it with the subdivisions so you can hear that more clearly. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, so in this case, it starts very syncopated, which means I'm accenting a lot of those offbeats. And then the second half of it is very straight, right on the downbeats. Do it one more time. 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now, if you remember, if you're paying attention, you'll notice that this is the opposite of what we did up here. Remember, this part started mainly on the downbeats and then flipped to the offbeats. This part starts mainly on the offbeats and then flips to the downbeats. So it sort of crosses over. So again, it's not just how do these notes relate to each other and how do they relate to the pulse. It's how do these notes relate to these notes, and how does this rhythm that we just did relate to the other rhythm? How do they interact with each other? So when we put it together, we get something like this: 3, 4. Or maybe I should play it so you get the context of how this fits into what's around it. 2, 3, 4, 1. Kind of does that. So also, we haven't touched on this yet. It's how all of these parts interact with each other, and also how do they interact with the harmony, like the underlying harmony of the song. Sometimes people don't know what that means. Underlying harmony is kind of maybe a weird concept if you're unfamiliar. I try to describe it as if you were strumming chords or playing chords along with the song, what would they be? Right? So in this case, it might be right? So F sharp minor, C sharp minor. Maybe technically it's C sharp minor 7, but if we're strumming triads, so in this case, the underlying harmony is all F sharp minor and eventually C sharp minor. Okay? Because this is how we hear things in context. Like this first note that we played, right? That's an A. That is not minor. It's just a note, right? The first note of this little riff down here is F sharp. F sharp is not minor. It's just a note. But when you put these two things together in some form or another, minor. And in fact, the other note that we've got at the same time is a C sharp. What are the 3 notes of F sharp minor? Do you know? F sharp, A, C sharp. That's literally it. We just played F sharp minor. Right, so in the song, we've got F sharp minor, C sharp minor 7, D major 7, C sharp dominant 7th, and then back. And then you just do all the same stuff again. then this time it just goes up. Same chords, C sharp dominant 7th, F sharp minor 7, just a different voicing. Same chords, different voicing. Okay, so you get what I'm talking about here? I know it's a weird kind of exercise, but if you take this song and kind of slice it up with a scalpel, we get this kind of simple, this simple, this pretty simple, but you put it together in different ways, different rhythms and different phrasing, and how they interact with each other becomes interesting. And then how it relates to the harmony. And then you can keep zooming out, because then it becomes, how does this part of the song relate to what came before it and what comes after it? And then even more, like, how does this song relate to the other songs around it, maybe on an album or in a set list? Sometimes a song will work at a certain point in the set and not somewhere else if it follows something else. So everything is just context, context, context. Okay? So hopefully this has given you something to think about. When it comes to talking about this with students, it really is one of my favorite things to witness, when the penny drops, that somebody can have way, way more great ideas for a song. Not the way they expect to, but by just changing the definition of what is a good idea, right? It doesn't have to sound finished. It just has to be something you can work with, right? And that's a much, much lower bar to cross, and something you could do any day, anytime, right? Which is once people start to realize, wow, you mean I can do this any day, anytime, anywhere? Because it's actually not that hard to come up with stuff like, and that's usable, and you can actually do something with that. Like, it's pretty cool, right? So there you go. There's my little thought for the day. Combinations, context, and training yourself to look at things, yes, like a finished product sometimes, but also as unrefined raw materials other times, and being able to shift back and forth and in and out in that way. So please let me know what you thought of this lesson. Did you learn something? Was that exercise helpful? This is kind of different. I've never done something like that, but let me know what you thought of it. And until next time, Dylan Reich, catch you later.